let's go to the rest of the college football world, because if you like college football, you love college football. There's nothing really in between. We do this every week, gentlemen. Give me your top 5 Heisman rankings right now through week 0 to 2.
Who wants to go first?
So I'll start. I know that Quinn has the best odds. He should have good odds just in terms of betting standpoint. I still think that the stats don't back it up completely in terms of my rankings. So I still have Cam Ward number 1. I think that he's just week in, week out lighting it up. And I mean, it's only been 2 weeks, but regardless, I still think that he's got a pretty good chance of getting this done. And they're a fun team to watch. I think they have a real opportunity here to be a sneaky team in this playoff race. Number 2, I will have Quinn in there. Of course, the big game against Michigan is huge. I mention this all the time. And for the new listeners out there, last time I spoke to a Heisman voter, he mentions that voting criteria comes down to how you play in big games. That's probably the biggest factor. And it doesn't get much bigger than the defending national champion at their home, and playing clean football against them. So Quinn number 2. Number 3, love the kid. Ashton Genty, Boise State running back, getting it done for a second week in a row, over 190 yards. I mean, this kid could really go over 2K. If this is the benchmark where he's continuing to put out these type of yardage numbers, there's a chance that he goes over 2,000 yards in a season. And the thing is, he's supposed to be this good too. So it's not like he came out of nowhere. He's going to be a guy that is going to make a lot of money in the NFL, I believe. But, Boise State's always been good with the running backs on that blue turf. And I think he's a good bet. Number 4, Carson Beck played an amazing game week 2. Finally giving him some love. I didn't put him in my top 5 last week, but this week he's working his way in there. And number 5, Jackson Dart. Lit it up as well for Ole Miss. Keeping it going. So got 4 quarterbacks, 1 running back in there.
Nice. Toss?
I have the exact same 5, just in a different order. I have Quinn Ewers number 1. To me, it's about winning the big games. And thus far in this college football season, he has the biggest win, and it was on the road. And it was incredibly, incredibly impressive, the game that he quarterbacked. So I have him number 1. I actually have Jackson Dart number 2. Statistically, what he's been able to do with passing yards, passing touchdowns, he's got 2 on the ground as well. It's hard to say that he and Beck and Cam Ward have really played tough competition. We'll see on this Florida team, but obviously Cam Ward did what he needed to do to dominate them on the road in the swamp, which is impressive, although I think their team kind of sucks. But
this could be the year that Jackson too. Jackson Merrill for the Padres, Lamar Jackson for the Ravens, Jackson Dart for Ole Miss.
And Jackson Dart obviously has a slightly different spelling. He's got the XSON, which is a lot of fun, but he's really, really impressed me. So I have him too. I have Cam Ward 3 for all the reasons that you listed, Nick. He's been incredibly impressive. I think he has of the power conferences the highest QBR of any of the quarterbacks at 94.9. which is an incredibly impressive number. And then I have GNT as 4, and I have Carson Beck at 5. They just haven't played anyone yet. He's been phenomenal. He's got 7 touchdowns already through the air. They play Alabama next weekend, which is going to be a massive, massive game. And I'm excited to watch that one, but that's my list. Josh, what about you?
Massive game for their quarterback too.
Yes.
Jalen Milroe, who's
Both
not
guys.
on my list. Not on my list right now. Cam Ward should be on my list. He's not. I have Ewers 1 for all the reasons you guys said. Goes into the big house defending national champs. Gets it done. Playing great football. He is the odds-on favorite. Nico, the quarterback for Tennessee, is actually the second odds-on favorite right now, which is pretty wild. He's legit. Probably the best freshman in the country. But he's not on my list either. Genty's 2. Played his toughest game and ran wild against Oregon. He's got not a cupcake schedule, but he's got a really easy schedule. Not hint, wink, wink. Boise State could make the college for our next segment. Boise State could make the college football playoff. And if they do that and he's running at this clip and he doesn't have any weak games and he's going over 130 every time at least, he's going to be in New York. He's going to have a shot to be in New York. And he's definitely going to have a seat. So he's my number 2. Jackson Dart, again, statistically, all the reasons you guys said, I think him and Lane Kiffin are in lockstep. He's my number 3. Carson Beck, maybe the best pound for pound quarterback in college football, is my number 4. He beat Clemson handily, and he's got some great stats to go with it. And number 5, this is just insane, but I'm throwing it out there. It's a tie, and there are 2 quarterbacks facing off this weekend: Washington State versus Washington. This guy has been a Heisman dark horse for mine in the past years ago. Will Rogers Beach, baby. Will Rogers with Jed Fish. He's an upperclassman. He's been playing college football for a while. He had some really good years at Mississippi State. Washington's schedule's got some tough games on it, but if they can make some noise, and I'm not saying go to the playoffs, but if they could finish a 2 or 3 loss team and Will Rogers puts up insane numbers with Jed Fish's offense, and they have a really, like you're saying, Nick, they beat X, Y, and Z. I'll pull up the schedule really quickly. If they have a resounding win, then I think Will Rogers has a chance to get a seat in New York, and he's going up against Washington State this weekend. And John Mateer is their quarterback. He ran for 197 yards when they beat the brakes off of Texas Tech last weekend. So Russian quarterbacks get a lot of love. Washington State schedule is not that tough. They're in the Pac-2 right now. And I think the winner of this game, if they have a strong showing, it matters. And I don't know, man, like Washington plays Michigan at home. They play Iowa. They have USC at home. And then obviously they have Penn State and the Ducks on the road, which will be tough games. But if Will Rogers really balls out, if John Mateer continues to ball out in Washington State's easy schedule, those guys are going to have crazy numbers, and they're going to have a shot to go to New York.
I love it.
Really random ones.
Solid lists.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the next one. Give me 3 teams that could sneak into the playoffs. Now, obviously not these top 10 teams. I think we all agree there are only a couple teams that we really feel as of right now, early in the season, that could win it all. Probably us and Georgia. No one else has given us enough confidence. Obviously, of your Bamas and your Ohio States of the world, but no one else has given us like enough confidence from what we've seen yet to be like, this team can actually hold the thing up at the end of the year. But give me 3 teams outside the top 10, definitely outside the top 15, even better, that could that could sneak to the playoffs and maybe surprise some teams.
Okay. Can we pause real quick? I don't think I can make it 20 minutes. I got to go to the bathroom really bad.
Yeah, we'll pause.
All right, thanks. All right, so I have 3 teams that I think can make a run, and these aren't teams that are top 10 in the rankings, teams that have good odds. Like obviously, we're not talking Texas, Georgia, Bama. I'm not even talking Miami because they're number 10 right now. These are teams that actually have a sneaky chance to make a run, get to the playoffs, that are maybe in that top 25 to 15 range, or even some teams that are unranked. So number 1, Arizona. I've been riding them all season long. I still think they have a solid chance to win the Big 12. And if you're winning the Big 12, you're punching your ticket to get to the college football playoff. There's a lot of teams that are ranked in this Big 12: Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State. But for some reason, I don't know, I feel like the wide receiver quarterback duo they got going on Arizona, and the defense plays solid too. I like Arizona. Number 2, Louisville. I think Louisville's got a good chance, especially with a weak ACC. If they can figure out a way to top Miami, I think they've got a pretty decent shot. I know it's 2 weeks in here, but regardless, it looks weak out of Clemson. It looks weak out of Florida State. Obviously Georgia State already suffers a loss too. So Georgia Tech, suffers a loss too. I feel like Louisville can get a chance in there.
Can I ask you a question on that? Because I was looking at them too. If they lose to Miami, is there still a path of them? Because Boston College is also on their schedule, who's a ranked team right now and has looked pretty solid. Of course, they beat Florida State as well. What do we think about that if they are a 1-loss Louisville team?
Yeah, I still think there's a chance.
I have Louisville in mind as well, because I think I'm looking at their schedule. If they beat Miami at home, that's an amazing.
Of course, yeah.
They have Clemson on their schedule. They have Notre Dame earlier. So if Notre Dame, if they beat Notre Dame when they're ranked, that matters more. So I think if they're a 1-loss ACC team, they could be that quote unquote second. You would need Miami to run the table and be undefeated, I would think, in the ACC. So Miami is undefeated. They're in. You have a 1-loss Louisville ACC team. Those would be the 2 ACC representatives, and I think they could definitely get in.
Yep. Cool. My 3rd team, Nebraska, started off season 2-0. Beat the crap out of Colorado. They've got a pretty easy schedule besides Ohio State and USC. If they can pull off one of those wins, I think they have a good chance with mini Patrick Mahomes over there. He's a freshman, but I think he's started out pretty impressive. Hasn't turned the ball over, and he's looked pretty good in his first couple starts. But it's really just a testament to how easy their schedule is across the board coming in this season. But like I said, 2 big games, they have to at least come out on top of one of them.
I'll pick up the baton from there because I also have Nebraska as one of my teams. And as good as Dylan Raiola has been in his first 2 games, and as talented as I believe he is, the reason why I'm in lockstep with you here, Nick, is because of their coach, Matt Rule, who's a great college football coach, and also because their offensive line is legit. They have real dudes up front. They have built in the trenches. They dominated Colorado, who none of us are super high on as a team collectively. I am particularly not fond of. I think they're bad. But Nebraska capitalized and they dog walked them. And I really think this is a team, like you said, if they split one of those games against USC or Ohio State, I think Ohio State to me feels a bit like a lock to beat Nebraska at this point. There's just too much veteran presence on that defense. And obviously, their quarterback has been playing college football for a long, long time, and Raiola will be tested, but I like them as a dark horse pick. My other 2, I got a little crazy with the spices here. They very well could not be in contention for the college football playoffs later today or by next week. I mean, if Northern Illinois runs the table after beating Notre Dame and Notre Dame doesn't suck the rest of the season, like, why are they not in? They should be in. They're the 25th ranked team right now. There's only room for them to go up. Their schedule is Doogie Howser, MD, terrible. It's so bad. They do play NC State, which, that could be an interesting game. I guess they play UMass. I hope they smack UMass. But yeah, I think Northern Illinois, I love their coach, obviously, and him crying after that. He's an alum of the school. It meant a lot to him, but he had his guys prepared and he trusts his guys. So I'm going to trust his guys too. And maybe they make it to the college football playoff. That'd be incredibly fun. It would never, ever happen besides this year with the expanded 12-team playoff. And that could be a cool story of people saying, like, this is why we moved to this format, right? Is because you give teams like this an opportunity. Teams in past where Boise State, we were talking about Ashton Janty, like Boise State they were the runt of the litter multiple times as we were growing up, and their team undefeated, and they wouldn't get into the national championship.
Same with TCU.
Absolutely. So I like the 12-team playoff format for that particular reason, if it happens. And I hope that we reward teams that go undefeated if they have one signature win on their schedule. And then the third team that I'll throw in there, they lost last weekend, but what if Kansas State wins the Big 12? What if they knock off Oklahoma later today? The Tulane Green Wave have been one of the most winning programs in college football for the last 3 years. If they're able to beat Oklahoma and have a close loss, actually a game at home that they should have won, a play got called back because of a BS offensive pick flag that was thrown. If the Tulane Green Wave beat Oklahoma, I think they have a chance to then make a run and go undefeated the rest of the season. They have a really good quarterback and potentially make the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think probably would have needed to be Kansas State for me, but I like that. I like that pick. Those are spicy picks. Those are Opa seasonings picks for sure, to say the least. Who someone said it the other week, going last stinks, does, because I have Nebraska, I have Louisville in mind, and if Nebraska picks up one of the wins on the road against USC or Ohio State, the schedule is one of the easiest ones in the Big Ten. They don't have to see Oregon. They don't have to see Michigan. They don't have to see Washington. Like, you don't have to see Penn State. Like, you have a pretty nice schedule in the Big Ten, there's a lot of good teams. So I think Nebraska, with their head coach, who we've seen be successful at the collegiate level, I think they're a strong team. It's a great fan base. It's a great program, historic program that hasn't been good for a long time. They're also dying to get back to the promised land of being that top tier program. And Dylan Raiola was the recruit to do it. And he's playing great. Like, you wouldn't know he's a freshman. I think they're going to continue to dial him up. So I like Nebraska. They are my number one. Louisville is my number two. Again, you get what you get one loss in the ACC. You're the number 2 team in the ACC. You could get there if they beat Miami. They have the home game in that one. If they beat Miami, they go undefeated. They pick up the win against Notre Dame. They beat Clemson. Like, Louisville's definitely going to go to the college football playoff. It can maybe shock some teams. And then 3, I had Iowa State. Like, I don't think they have that tough of a schedule in the Big 12. Like, and Campbell's a heck of a coach. He's been a guy that's been a constant in college football, has never really gotten over the hump and taken his team to the land of like, oh, we're unbelievably competitive. But again, this is the 12-team format. A couple teams from each conference will get in, and I think we'll see 4 or 5 from the SEC, maybe 3 or 4. We'll see 4 or 5 from the SEC.
No, I'm chuckling because it's ridiculous how good that conference is. I'm not chuckling because I think you're wrong. Yeah,
you'll see 5 from. Let's say you see 5 from the SEC, 3 from the Big 10, 2 from the Big 12, or 2 from the ACC, and then 1 random, and then 1. From the ACC or the Big 12, whoever doesn't send 2. I think that gets us to 12, if my math does serve me correctly. And another team I'll throw out there, somewhat of the blue wave, the green wave, is the Boise State Broncos. I think that if they have if their one loss is a 3-point loss to Oregon, and Ashton Genty's running wild, they're going to want that in the college football playoff, and that's going to matter. So I think for Boise State, like it's crunch time now. You didn't win against Oregon, but you did what you got to do to prove it to people. Yeah. And I think if you could continue to put up some points and have a Heisman candidate in a 12-team situation, they're going to want to sneak you in. And it's different. Like, you bring up Northern Illinois. Let's say this Cinderella works out. Northern Illinois runs the table and they go to the college football playoff. They're undefeated and they're in. And we've seen like Jordan Lynch, if you guys remember him, the running quarterback from Northern Illinois, be good with the Huskies in the past, and they've gotten some national love because of him in Heisman voting. If they're a team that goes to the college football playoff, and it's not a Cincinnati-Bama situation where Cincinnati goes in and with Desmond Ridder and Fickle, and it's never really close, and they kind of just get punched in the mouth and smacked. And I was like, all right, thanks for playing. We put you in. We're never going to do this again. But if Northern Illinois could somehow get in, a Boise State could somehow get in, and they could upset a team,
it makes it all worth it.
It makes it all worth it, man. It validates exactly why we do this.
Well, I mean, look, you think about, we just mentioned the Boise States of the early 2000s, the TCUs, the UCFs that went undefeated, that had seasons where they were like back-to-back undefeated teams, where like they had literally not lost in 2 years and still had not sniffed the college football playoff or the national championship when it was. This is why we do it, because there's always that what if, like, was that team actually that good? Is there a shot that if they were to be in that game, if they would actually win? And, obviously the way you look at it is that, okay, they're not as talented in terms of recruiting. They didn't play as good of opponents, but regardless, like, now you warrant the fact that if you are undefeated or if you win your conference, you get in there. You're basically rewarding these kids, like for sticking it to a program that's not necessarily a big blue blood that has built a program to an undefeated team. And you're completely right. All it takes is one upset, and it is validated why this format will work.
Big March Madness, right?
But if we see, but if we see like 3 or 4 blowouts where no one even gets close, then like maybe we have to kind of pump the brakes a little bit.
So with that said, currently, Josh, you said 4 or 5 teams from the SEC. Is that what you mentioned? Georgia's number 1, Texas is number 2, Alabama's number 4, Ole Miss is number 5, Mizzou's number 6, Tennessee's number 7. That's 6 of the top 7 teams in the nation are in the SEC.
And they're all going to play each other too, so
I
going to shake up a little.
Right, but I have 2 questions.
You have 15 as well.
2 questions here. 1, could all 6 of those teams make it? And 2, if 5 of those 6 teams are making it, who is your pick to get bounced out of those top 6 right now?
I don't think it's possible that all 6 make it. I think they all play each other, so you're going to have to suffer some losses here, and there's just not going to be enough room.
Fair.
I don't know. Yeah, all 6 is tough. I'm looking at schedules right now.
I would say Mizzou gets bounced.
I actually kind of disagree. Their toughest game is at Alabama, and other than that, they don't play Georgia, they don't play Tennessee, they don't play us, they don't play Ole Miss. Let me look at Ole Miss's schedule.
I do, Georgia. Nick, I agree with you. I don't think Mizzou is as good as those other teams are.
I just think the schedule lends itself, though.
And I agree with you, Josh. I think that's a very valid point.
Here's a hot take. Like, let me pull up Georgia because I'm looking at Ole Miss, Tennessee. I'm assuming we're not. I'm saying we're making it, obviously.
Bama's
So I'm
got a tough
assuming
schedule.
that's what I'm saying. So like I'm looking at Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Mizzou as if they're the obvious picks, but Bama has to go.
Georgia has a tough schedule too.
Exactly. So like, what if it's one of those teams that we're not anticipating? Bama has to go to Tennessee. They play Mizzou. They're at LSU. They're at OU. They're home against Georgia. Like that. That is a way tougher schedule than we have. Mizzou has or Ole Miss has. Georgia. They're at Bama, at us, at Ole Miss, home versus the Vols. That they played those. They're playing almost. They're the only one that plays almost everybody. They have the toughest. They're the toughest opponent anybody plays, but they have the toughest schedule per teams that they play.
So would you bet, if you had to bet on there being 5 representatives in the SEC in the college football playoff or 4, would you lean towards 4?
And then we're just like, okay, let's.
I think it's also like take account that these teams are through 2 weeks in the season ranked 6 in the top 7. Like they're showcasing, and obviously the CFP is different, the value of the SEC, right? And
but
what
they're showcasing on this. We're still in week 2. No one's really played that many major games yet. This is all potential based. This is Absolutely. All how good we think teams are. So the rankings are going to vastly change. Like, I don't know, man. Like USC, I'm looking at them. They have a really tough schedule. In US, Miami is going to get in, I think, and we all think. We're Louisville. Oklahoma State's interesting. Utah's really interesting. There's a lot of interesting teams. It's just honestly, it's really contingent on how Penn State and Oregon do. Is how many teams. Like Oregon's schedule outside of I mean, I don't think we've been impressed by them very much. And I think Oregon State's going to cover this weekend. But if Oregon's only loss is to Ohio State, they'll probably go. And Penn State at USC is tough. They host the Buckeyes, which is interesting. And those are their 2 tough games, really. So if it's Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, I would err on the side of 4 teams from the SEC getting in, with maybe the Big 12 getting 2. That brings us to 9. And then the ACC getting 1 or 2, and then maybe like the 1, Fugazi team.
Yeah, there's also like the gymnastics that come into play when, Ole Miss and Alabama both play LSU, but LSU lost to USC, right? And what happens, like these non-conference games that are scheduled at the beginning of the season, when it gets really tight at the end of the year, when we're talking about the college football playoff, become very important and become talking points. So if LSU beats Alabama and Ole Miss, hypothetically, now Ole Miss transitively, they've lost to USC, or there's an argument that you can make that USC is better than them. And so if it comes I'm just saying, like,
yes, you're right. But if it's so early on, then it really matters head to head. Like where it came into play last year, it mattered. We were automatically in with Bama winning because we beat Bama. There's no way you're going to put Bama in ahead of us. I don't care if they beat Georgia and won the SEC. We beat them. It's a head-to-head thing. If it comes tooth and nail down to, let's say LSU cooks. Let's say LSU figures it out. They lost to USC, and let's say they get hot. Totally plausible. Let's say LSU, but it comes down to LSU versus USC. USC is going to go in.
No. I'm saying
I know what you're saying.
If LSU cooks and then Alabama has lost a couple of games and they lost to LSU, if it's between, because USC doesn't win the Big Ten, and it's between at an at-large bid, USC and Alabama, that's where that conversation gets really interesting. If USC's beating LSU,
I think it matters less if it's yes, but I think it matters less if it's not head-to-head. If it's transitive property, I think it holds a lot less weight than head-to-head at the beginning of the season. And it all matters how they. It's so many factors. How they lose, when they lose, like if
where they
lose,
right?
Where they lose. If Georgia barely loses to us, if we barely lose to Georgia, like that all plays into it.
I don't think that game's swaying people either way unless it's a blowout. Realistically,
that game's gonna sway people either way. If that game is, if
Georgia runs about like, it feels a little bit akin to trying to think of a comparative game. Like we just said, we believe that there's, in my opinion, there's 3 contenders, true contenders who I think can go all the way. And it's Georgia and it's us and it's Ohio State. So by that logic, if Georgia and Texas play each other and it's a close game, I'm not like losing my opinion of Texas being a true contender. Maybe if they have to go through Georgia, I'll be like, okay, I'm a little bit wary of that, but I don't think that much less of them in that situation.
Yeah, but then we get into like, do they get the bye? Those things get tricky too, which are all other things that you have to consider versus the back end teams. Tricky. All right. Fisher to top was DJ, Nikki, Snacks Crider, Horns Up Talking Texas. To those listening on ESPN 102.7 Austin, enjoy game day. We out you. We love you. Hook 'em. We'll see you next time.